Okay, thank you guys so much for having me on. I'm very excited to talk a little bit about my process here. A bit of a disclaimer though, even though I've been doing this for a while, I'm not exactly the most experienced, I can say. I don't really aim for much realism in my tuning, just more so what sounds good to me. And I know that's a very subjective term, so I hope you learn something from here. But I figured what I'll do is I'll start off with the clip that I'll play here, and then I'll go through the steps that I take to make it sound the way it does. So let me just play it here for us. 空飛ぶ夢見た後に飲みかけのぬるいコーヒー見慣れた部屋で映画はまだ続いてるその向こうのんきな空そう変わらない Lazy Lazy. And then there's an instrumental break, and then another verse and chorus. And so this is a cover of Crazy Crazy from the Idolmaster series. I have a preview version of this up on my channel on YouTube. I'm still working on the full game size PV for it. But to start from the top, I do have it set so I'm using more sampler. I have this semi-permanent flag that I use with this particular voice bank that I just released last month. Helps it give a little bit more of a whispery, husky feeling to it, especially because the song itself is very sultry. Going from here, the note properties, I have the intensity set default to 100, modulation. I go anywhere between 3 and 5, give it a little bit of variation, some color to it. And then constant velocity I have set to 165. My rule of thumb is that I round up to the nearest 25 from the tempo. The tempo here is 143, so I probably could have gone up to 150, but I wanted to give it a little bit of extra room there, so I did 165. To be honest, I don't necessarily know technically how constant velocity works. I just know that, higher numbers for higher tempos make it sound a little bit better. Hopefully someone else can go over that if they haven't already. But let's get into the notes part of it. So when it comes to the portamento, I have a tendency to focus more on dips between descending notes. So you'll see it here in the first line between the tobu. We have it dipping into we have it dipping into a half step below. And I say half step because I am actually keeping the scale of the song in mind, the key signature. So Crazy Crazy is sung in the key of A major, and so that's F sharp, G sharp, and C sharp, all the other white keys on top of that. So I want to make sure that my tuning stays within those parameters, because if I try to stray from that, it'll sound a little off, it'll sound a little wonky to me. So if you don't know what key signature you're working in, good rule of thumb is to just take a look at what notes are in the project here and then just use those as a baseline. Otherwise, there's an online site called TuneBat that I drag and drop any MP3s, WAV files that I have. It'll spit out the tempo and the key signature for me. Sometimes if there's a MIDI or a piano cover in their sheet music online, I can look at that. And be careful if it's transposed though. Some instruments have different ranges, and so the sheet music notation for that specific instrument might be different from the original, so just double check that. But going back to my portamento bit here, so you see a lot of dips. You see spikes, but that's more so when it comes to the end breaths. I'll get to that in a sec, but I generally don't do spikes when it comes to raising notes. So you'll see the dip between the tobu here, but the bu-yu, there's not really much of a spike because I can't seem to utilize those properly myself. I know it's more of a use sparingly. I hear nani nune no sounds do well with the spike. There's something about the n sound there that works for it, but I generally just stay away from it myself. When it comes to longer sustained notes, I generally don't go too far down. Let me see if I can pull one up here. Oh yeah, so so kawaranai. So that's another point that I'm sure other people will make too, is singing and trying to listen to yourself, how you're not always on tune, especially in the transitions between notes. There's a little bit of variance there, so trying to pick up on that. is really helpful too. But when it comes to longer notes like this, I generally don't tend to make this too deep because then that gets really extreme. So I'm gonna just play this here real quick. Yeah, that's nai. Like no one sings like that, at least not that I've heard, without it being super exaggerated. So I'm just gonna go ahead and put that back. Play it one more time. So we still have a little bit of a dip there, but it's not as extreme. And then one thing that I wanted to note as well is that the portamento lines for the rest of the note, I sometimes have a tendency to keep it a little off center. Still within the realm of the note, we're not heading into the next, half step or whole step, but you can see this portamento line for the O here is slightly going up. And I think earlier on, I can just pull it up here. It's very subtle, the effects of keeping the portamento line slightly off-center from the actual note itself. Because again, it gives that variance, it gives that color to the vocals. Again, not everyone is 100% on pitch, on tune all the time, so it kind of helps in that regard. When it comes to end breaths, I like to tune them extremely high or extremely low. And the reason for that being is it sort of adds a little bit of an effect to how you're singing. When you have this high spike here, it's very emotive, it's very sweet almost. Depending on the song, it's either sweet or sultry. I kind of like to describe it as a bit of a come hither type deal, but maybe I can play a little bit of an example between high and low for us here. So Mada versus, let me see if I can just, where did the note go? Where am I? Oh, I don't know why I did that. Let's see. It's not letting me change it for some reason here. So I don't know why, but whenever I run OBS and UTAU at the same time, I can't access I can't use Pitch Editor. I'm actually surprised Pitch Editor is opening for me right now because I've run into issues with it. So I wonder if I can just do this manually real quick. Oh, actually, here, let me remove these. And I'm just going to Control Z all this back, or just not save my changes. Why is it linear? Give me the S curve. There you go, S curve. Remove. Hold on. Oops. So we heard it earlier with the high, right? And trying it with the low. Mada kind of gives it a more serious, more straightforward sound to it. So whatever you're going for, just keep that in mind. Try to base it off of whatever song you are covering or producing, I should say. Oh, another thing that I wanted to bring up, envelopes. And so I generally try not to keep them the default flat way they are. In fact, I try to keep an ear out for sort of a flow pattern here. This envelope editor plugin is all right. I don't like how it makes the lyrics come up as mojibake, so you either have to line it up or kind of keep in mind which notes are which. But I guess you could say the velocity of the note or the volume of the note, we have a tendency to emphasize certain notes sometimes without changing the pitch of it, just how loud we are. And so by kind of going through and emulating that sort of pattern, that up-down pattern when it comes to talking, really helps in that regard as well. I find I do this more with hanasu as well. Kind of gives it that more human feel. Okay, I am just about at 10 minutes here. I think I've pretty much covered everything that I've wanted to. But yeah, I should be open for questions now. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. Sorry, that was a bad pun. Okay, bye.